and welcome to this episode of Round Robin. We're going to give you some tips today on how to make your yard look a little better and be a little more appealing, and introduce you to a contest that the city has to help recognize people who do some outstanding work in their yards. My guests today are Debbie Blanton with the Clean City Commission and Jim Williams, also with the commission but as a volunteer.
Right.
And Jim, your background is in horticulture. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You, for many years, were the extension agent for the city of Hampton.
I did. I worked with Virginia Cooperative Extension.
And how long have you been involved in yards program and in recognizing what individual homeowners do?
I became involved with the yards program in probably 1993. I moved to Hampton in 92, my wife and I did, and so in probably the spring of 93, summer of 93, we got the program kind of rejuvenated, the yards program.
Okay, and so the goal of the yards program is what, really?
It's to recognize people who maintain beautiful, the acronym YARDS, YRDS, stands for Yards Are Really Distinctive Showplaces. And so we recognize people who maintain their yards, turf grass, but mowing at the proper heights, and using trees and shrubs that are more drought tolerant, but doing it in a beautiful way, so in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. And so we just try to recognize that, and we have Yard of the Month, and then every year there is a Yard of the Year winner.
But so the idea is not just an individual yard being a showpiece, but ultimately that spills over to your neighbor and your neighborhood. Exactly. and really kind of picks up the look of the whole city.
Right, and educates people, because if one of the yards contest winners is out there performing a particular act in the yard, maybe they're mulching around their trees at a certain time, or maybe they're mowing at a certain height, then their neighbors say, well, why are you doing that? And they can explain that that's what's best for not only for their yard, but also for the Chesapeake Bay.
Because I assume there's almost this conflict between the prettier your turf grass is, in some cases the more chemicals and applications you're putting on there. And you really want people to be smart about how they fertilize and use chemicals.
That's correct. And this year, each year we have a planning session, a training. We have training, but before we do the training, we actually want to talk about it through the beautification committee. And one of the things that we talked about this year, and we kind of talk about it every year, but we're going to put a little bit more emphasis on it this year, and that is that people actually, when the judges go out to look at the yards, that they really pay close attention or closer attention to how people did it, and whether or not, one of the things that we understand, for years we've known that if you have a cool season grass like a fescue, you shouldn't fertilize that very heavily in the spring of the year, and certainly not in the summer, but some people do it anyway. And so we want to be sensitive to those things. And if people do it, and it's not protecting the health of the bay, then maybe they're not rewarded for it.
So the idea of this is people can nominate their own yards or their neighbors' yards for this program. And then how do they do that, Debbie, and what happens next?
They can nominate through our online nomination form. If you go to the Hampton Clean City Commission website, which is hampton.gov/HCCC, they can go to the yards contest and nominate someone. Or they can call us at 727-1130, or they can email the information to hccc@hampton.gov. And we also have brochures that have a nomination on the back, and they can send that in. We don't get very many people doing that because it's so much more convenient to pick up the phone.
Right. And so what does a judge look for? What makes a yard a really distinctive showplace?
Well, they look for, and we have a form that shows it, but they look for curb appeal. They look for drought-tolerant plants. They look for plants that, there is a term that we use, a slogan, I guess, right plant, right place. It's used in horticulture. And so you want to make sure that the yard is in balance.
What does that mean for those of us who aren't?
In terms of landscaping, right? You can have, and it doesn't necessarily have to be symmetrical. in order to be balanced. But when you look at it, it kind of looks weighted, it looks even, right? And so you look at it from the curb, and you just say, yeah, that's nice, that's attractive, right? The other thing is you want to they look for the types of grass, whether it's a cool season or warm season grass, and then question them about how they maintain it.
So either one is okay for this climate. It's just a question of then how you maintain it and what you
They are not treated
on
the
it.
same way.
Right.
Yet, and I think, although either one may be okay, I think a drought-tolerant grass for this area is better. I have zoysia, a mix of zoysia and Bermuda in my yard, just because of the water and the heat that we get in this area, the lack of water or less rainfall.
All right, so Jim, for people who don't know the difference between cool season and warm season, you mentioned zoysia and Bermuda. What are those, and what makes that work for you?
Okay, cool season grasses are fescues, turf-type tall fescues, the old Kentucky 31 that we used to think about.
That's probably what more people have. You think that's true? Or
a lot of
not
people
so
do.
much?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Especially in an older house, established yard. Okay.
Yeah, and I think people just for years they use that grass anyway, like Kentucky 31. But you can really tell the difference if your grass goes dormant, or if it has that blonde color or straw color during the winter. The likelihood is that it's a warm season grass. Warm season grasses in this area tend to start growing again in about March, right? So the cool season grasses are green for the most part all year. Although when temperatures reach above about 85, they kind of slow down. And so in the summer, you'll see that they're not doing well at all, where in the warm season grasses continue to perform. So the fescues or cool season, Bermuda, zoysia, centipede, St. Augustine grasses are the warm season grasses.
Now, do you give people tips on, and I know the Extension Agency does this, but do you give people tips on how to make their yard better? And by better, maybe it means beautiful, but maybe it also means plants that are suited to this climate or that are native to this area.
We have a flyer that we will provide, and it's also available online, and it basically outlines how to make your yard look beautiful. So it goes through the criteria like the curb appeal and the items of special interest and maintenance plans and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the technical questions, we turn to our partner, the Virginia Cooperative Extension, and we work very closely with the Hampton Master Gardeners. So we know what our limits are.
Right.
In fact, some of the judges are Master Gardeners. And the Master Gardener, Megan Tierney, who's the horticultural agent in the city, Megan and I do the training. And again, we would hope that, or we certainly expect that when the judges go out, they will talk with the people some, and we are going to try to emphasize that a little bit more also, that they talk with people about how to, even if they have a beautiful yard, how to improve it and make sure that it's improving the health of the bay, just environmental health altogether.
And it's also important too from an economic point of view, at least in my mind, when people are going out and putting fertilizer on their fescue grasses in the spring and basically the spring rains wash it away, they're wasting their money. Or if they're making their grass grow very rapidly in the spring, but its roots aren't growing into the ground, then come summertime, the grass is going to die. So they've wasted the money they spent on the grass seed and the fertilizer. It's important to know what is the right thing to do, and the right thing to do almost always is more economically advantageous to you if you follow the rules and do what you're supposed to do. And that's why it's important to make good use of the cooperative extension and also to pay attention to some of the guidelines that we provide in our yards contest.
That's great. So this is a reward for those people who do it. About how many households do you typically have in the program?
We normally receive about 12 nominations a month, 8 to 12. We award 3 Yard of the Month awards monthly, May through September, and then we look at those yards again and come up with the Yard of the Year award winners. And so this past year, we recognized the DeBose family on Wills Way, which is in Michaels Woods area. And what we try to do is use those beautiful yards to show people that not only can they have a beautiful yard, but they can also be friendly to the environment at the same time.
That's a great program. Is there anything else you want to add that I haven't asked you?
No, just tell people to sign up for it. I mean, you've already talked about that.
And it's an
think,
ongoing thing, so
yeah.
I can sign up next month or the month after. I mean, that's kind of a nice idea.
Right. You
Whenever. Yeah.
If you think your yard looks best in July, you can sign up in June, and then they'll come and judge you in July.
Interesting.
Now, I think it's important, though, to mention that the program is sponsored in part by our local garden centers and others. So we give the winners coupons, and those coupons come from the garden centers.
And they're a great resource, too. I mean, I have noticed over the past dozen or so years that they've all become more aware of the environmental benefits, and you can certainly find more natural products there, especially for pest control and things like that. They're very good at educating people, because it doesn't do them any good. If you buy a plant and it's not going to thrive here, then it doesn't help the garden center, it doesn't help the homeowner. So I see that as more and more of a partnership.
Yeah, I think there's been a societal shift. When I started working with Extension back in the late 70s, and during that time, at that time, someone, if they had a problem, an insect or weed or whatever, they'd say, well, what can I use to kill it?
Right.
Now, when I retired, and even now I know that people will say, well, I have this insect. Do I need to do anything about it? Or will it do any harm if I just leave it there? So they're looking more like for thresholds as to whether, so before they just say, I want to get rid of it.
Bug, kill it.
The tolerance level was 0. And now people are much more tolerant because we've heard so much about the environmental impacts of the things that we do, and the harm that we're doing.
Right, and so many insects are beneficial.
That's right.
Sure.
Or, beautiful and harmless, too.
Exactly. One thing that every homeowner should remember is that their yard is only one storm drain away from the Chesapeake Bay. And so the chemicals that they use, the actions that they take in their yard are going to impact on the bay no matter what. And so it's important that they do the right things, and that's what this contest encourages, is that people do the right things.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Debbie, for coming by today and sharing that. That's
Certainly.
Helpful for homeowners, and we hope you'll go to the website. You want to repeat that again, Debbie?
The website is hampton.gov/HCCC, and then click on the Yards Contest.
And some other opportunities there for people to volunteer and be involved or learn more about the environment and their impacts as well.
Visit our website.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us in this episode of Round Robin.